When everything goes wrong, Natalie Hayes adjusted her camera lens for the 100th time that afternoon, trying to capture the perfect shot of the bride and groom cutting their cake. The Napa Valley wedding venue was absolutely stunning, with rolling vineyards stretching toward golden hills in the distance. White roses adorned every surface. String lights created a magical glow as the sun began setting. Her best friend, Brooke, looked radiant in her lace wedding gown, laughing as her new husband playfully smeared frosting on her nose. Natalie smiled behind her camera, genuinely happy for her friend, while trying not to think about her own complicated love life, or rather her complete lack of one. "Excuse me, photographer lady." A slightly drunk groomsman stumbled past Natalie, bumping her elbow just as she pressed the shutter button. The camera jerked sideways. Natalie stumbled backward, directly into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne glasses. Everything happened in slow motion. The tray tilted. Champagne flew through the air in a sparkling arc, and Natalie crashed directly into the most impeccably dressed man she had ever seen in her entire life. The collision that changed everything, the champagne soaked them both completely. Natalie found herself pressed against the chest of a tall man in what had to be a $5,000 suit, now dripping with expensive French champagne. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, and his piercing blue eyes looked down at her with an expression somewhere between shock and annoyance. "Oh my gosh. I am so incredibly sorry," Natalie gasped, trying to disentangle herself while her camera swung wildly around her neck. "That groomsman just bumped me and I wasn't looking where I was going, and now your suit is completely ruined, and I swear I will pay for the dry cleaning, even though it probably costs more than my rent." The man opened his mouth to respond, but a group of older gentlemen in expensive suits approached them quickly. "Pembroke." One of them called out in a thick Japanese accent. "We saw the whole thing. Is your lovely companion all right?" Natalie blinked in confusion. Companion? She was about to correct them when the man whose suit she had just destroyed did something completely unexpected. His arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close against his side. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, his voice deep and controlled, "please meet Natalie, my fiancée. She gets a bit clumsy when she's working, but I find it endearing." Natalie's brain completely shut down. Fiancé, what was happening? Who was this person? Why was he lying to these businessmen? Playing along with the Letha, Japanese businessmen smiled warmly, clearly charmed by what they thought was an authentic moment between an engaged couple. Natalie stood frozen, champagne dripping from her hair, while the handsome stranger kept his arm firmly around her waist. "How wonderful," the lead businessman exclaimed. "Young love is so refreshing. We were just discussing business with Mr. Pembroke, but clearly this is a celebration. When is the wedding?" "Soon," the man said quickly, squeezing Natalie's waist in what felt like a warning. "Very soon. We're still finalizing details." Natalie's survival instincts finally kicked in. Whatever was happening, this man clearly needed her cooperation desperately. And if she contradicted him now, in front of what were obviously important business associates, she would look like either a liar or completely insane. "Yes," she heard herself saying. "Soon we wanted to keep it private because Garrett values his privacy so much. So his name was Garrett." "Good to know." The businessman chatted enthusiastically about marriage and commitment while Natalie stood there in her champagne-soaked dress, her camera equipment probably damaged, wondering what alternate universe she had accidentally stumbled into after what felt like forever. The businessmen finally excused themselves to get drinks. The moment they were out of earshot, Natalie pulled away from Garrett and stared at him with wide eyes. "What on earth was that?" she whispered intensely. The explanation: Garrett ran a hand through his damp hair, looking genuinely stressed for the first time. "I need to explain. Can we go somewhere private?" "You think you just told a bunch of random men that I'm your fiancé." "They're not random men. They're investors from Tokyo who are about to commit $300 million to my company, and they value stability, commitment, family values. I've been negotiating this deal for 8 months." Natalie stared at him. "And you thought the best solution was to lie about being engaged? You crashed into me covered in champagne. They assumed we were together. I made a split-second decision." Garrett looked around nervously. Please, just 5 minutes to explain. Then you can walk away and never see me again if you want. Something in his voice made Natalie pause. He sounded desperate, which seemed odd for someone who could afford such an expensive suit. She glanced over at Brooke, who was dancing with her new husband, completely unaware of the drama unfolding. 5 minutes, Natalie agreed. But this better be good. They found a quiet corner near the vineyard gardens. The sun had fully set now, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees around them. Under different circumstances, this might have been romantic. The proposal that wasn't my name is Garrett Pembroke, he began. I'm the CEO of Pembroke Technologies. We develop artificial intelligence systems for healthcare applications. Okay, Natalie said slowly. And I'm Natalie Hayes, photographer, Brooklyn resident, person who definitely did not agree to be anyone's fake fiancé. Garrett had the decency to look embarrassed. I know, I'm sorry. But when Tanaka and his colleagues saw us together, they got this expression like everything suddenly made sense. They've been concerned about my focus, wondering if I'm too young and unstable to handle their investment. Seeing me with someone appearing settled and committed, it changed their entire attitude immediately. So you lied? I improvised poorly, Garrett corrected. And now I need your help. Natalie laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You need my help? I need to finish photographing this wedding, salvage my equipment, figure out how to explain to my best friend why I'm covered in champagne. I'll pay for new equipment. Top of the line. Whatever you need, I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, Garrett said, then immediately winced. That came out wrong. I meant that I can compensate you fairly for your inconvenience. The offer Natalie was about to walk away when Garrett spoke again, his voice quieter now. Just hear me out. The investors are staying in Napa for the weekend. They want to have dinner with me and my fiancé tomorrow night. One dinner. 2 hours of your time. I'll pay you $10,000. Natalie nearly choked. $10,000 for one dinner? To pretend we're engaged? To answer questions about our relationship? To help me secure this investment that will fund research into AI diagnostic tools that could save thousands of lives? I Taoist. I know it sounds manipulative, and it is. But the work we're doing is important. This funding could change healthcare accessibility for underserved communities. Natalie studied him carefully. He seemed genuine, even if the situation was absolutely insane. And $10,000 would cover 3 months of rent, plus the repairs on her car that she had been putting off. One dinner, she said slowly. 2 hours, and then we never see each other again. One dinner, Garrett agreed. Though we should probably exchange numbers in case we need to coordinate our story. Our story, Natalie repeated, still not quite believing this was happening. Right, because we're engaged now. Temporarily engaged. Is there such a thing? Garrett pulled out his phone. Apparently, yes. Now, we should probably establish some basic facts. How did we meet? Creating the backstory for the next 20 minutes. Standing in the vineyard gardens, while the wedding reception continued without them. Natalie and Garrett created an entirely fictional relationship history. They decided they had met at a coffee shop in San Francisco 6 months ago. He had been reading the newspaper. She had been editing photos on her laptop, and they had bonded over both ordering the same complicated coffee drink. What kind of complicated coffee drink? Natalie asked. Almond milk latte with an extra shot and caramel drizzle, Garrett suggested. Do you actually drink that? Never. I drink black coffee. But it sounds like something a couple would bond over. They agreed on having their first date at an Italian restaurant in North Beach. Garrett had been nervous and knocked. Over his water glass, Natalie had found it charming rather than clumsy. I would never knock over water, Garrett said seriously. It's called character development, Natalie countered. Perfect people are boring. Something flickered in Garrett's expression, but he moved on quickly. Where did I propose? Propose? Natalie's voice went up an octave. We have to have a proposal story, too. Engaged people typically have those. Natalie thought for a moment. Top of Coit Tower. Sunset. You had the ring hidden in your jacket pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. 8. That's actually pretty good, Garrett admitted. I'm a photographer. I think visually. Natalie paused. What kind of ring? The ring problem. Garrett's eyes widened slightly. Ring, right? We need a ring. Most engaged people have those too, Natalie said dryly. Garrett checked his watch. The hotel gift shop might still be open. Or there's a jewelry store in town. You're going to buy a fake engagement ring at a gift shop? Do you have a better suggestion with 15 minutes notice? Natalie looked down at her right hand, where she wore a simple silver band that had belonged to her grandmother. It was beautiful in an understated way, with tiny engraved flowers around the band. Here, she said, sliding it off and placing it in Garrett's palm. Use this. It fits my ring finger. Garrett stared at the ring like she had just handed him a live grenade. This looks like it has sentimental value. It does. Which is why you're going to take very good care of it for the next 48 hours. Natalie, I can't accept something that clearly means something to you. Then don't lose it. She closed his fingers around the ring. Consider it collateral. You take care of my grandmother's ring. I'll pretend to be your fiancé. Deal. Garrett looked at the ring, then at her face, then back at the ring. Deal, he said softly. Thank you. Back to reality, they exchanged phone numbers and created a shared document with their fake relationship timeline. Garrett transferred $5,000 to her account as a deposit, which appeared on Natalie's phone with a notification that made her head spin. That's real money, she said, staring at her phone. The rest comes after dinner tomorrow. Speaking of which, 8 p.m. at the French Laundry. I'll pick you up at 7. The French Laundry? That place has a 3-month waiting list. Not if you're willing to pay their private dining room rates. Garrett hesitated. Will you be comfortable? I know this whole situation is bizarre. Natalie laughed, a real laugh this time. Comfortable. I'm standing in a vineyard, soaking wet with champagne. Having just agreed to fake an engagement with a stranger for $10,000? Comfortable is relative. Is something that might have been a smile tugged at Garrett's mouth. Fair point. They walked back toward the reception together. Brooke spotted Natalie immediately and rushed over, her wedding dress swishing around her. Natalie? What happened? Are you okay? I saw you covered in champagne and then you disappeared. I'm fine, Natalie assured her. Just a clumsy moment. This is Garrett. He got caught in the splash zone too. Garrett extended his hand politely. Congratulations on your wedding. It's beautiful. Brooke shook his hand, then looked between them with sudden interest. Wait, are you two together? Natalie opened her mouth to deny it, but Garrett spoke first. We are, he said smoothly, his arm finding its way around Natalie's waist again. I've been keeping her all to myself, but I suppose the secret's out now. Brooke's eyes went huge. Natalie Hayes. You've been hiding a boyfriend? It's new, Natalie said weakly. Very new. Like incredibly new. Well, he's gorgeous. Brooke grinned. We're definitely talking about this later. But first you both need to change. You're dripping on everything. As Brooke hurried off to find towels, Natalie turned to Garrett. You didn't have to tell my best friend. Consistency, he said simply. If we're going to do this, we need to commit fully. Commit fully to the fake engagement. Exactly. Natalie shook her head, still not quite believing any of this was real. In 24 hours, she would be having dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants in California. Pretending to be engaged to a billionaire she had just met. What could possibly go wrong? The morning after reality, Natalie woke up in her hotel room with a pounding headache and a phone full of text messages. For a blissful moment, she thought maybe the entire previous night had been a champagne-induced dream. Then she checked her bank account and saw the $5,000 deposit. Not a dream. Definitely not a dream. Her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number that she now recognized as Garrett's. Garrett, good morning. Car will pick you up at 6:30 p.m. Dress code is formal. If you need anything purchased, my assistant can arrange it. Natalie, your assistant? You have an assistant? Garrett, 3, actually. Rachel handles personal matters. She's discreet and excellent at her job. Natalie, of course you have 3 assistants. Why would you have a normal amount of assistants? Garrett, was that sarcasm? Natalie, I'm still learning how to communicate with billionaires. Give me time. There was a pause before his next message came through. Garrett, I appreciate your humor. Most people are afraid to joke with me, Natalie. Most people probably aren't fake engaged to you for money. Garrett, fair point. Rachel will contact you within the hour about the dress situation. Natalie stared at her phone. The dress situation. Like she was a problem that needed solving with expensive clothing. She was about to type a response when another message appeared. Garrett, that came out wrong. I meant that you should have something you feel confident in. Not because what you own isn't good enough, but because these dinners can be intimidating and feeling good in what you're wearing helps. Natalie, did you just apologize via text? Garrett, I'm trying to be considerate. Is it working? Natalie, surprisingly, yes. Your assistant can call me. Meeting Rachel turned out to be a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, exceptional organizational skills, and absolutely no judgment about the bizarre situation. She arrived at Natalie's hotel room at 10 a.m. sharp with a rolling rack of dresses, 3 shoeboxes, and a makeup artist in tow. Mr. Pembroke explained the situation, Rachel said diplomatically as she hung dresses in Natalie's room. I want you to know that your privacy is completely protected. I've signed NDAs that would bankrupt me if I spoke about any client's personal business. Does this happen often? Natalie asked. The fake engagement thing. Rachel's lips twitched with amusement. Let's just say that Mr. Pembroke's approach to problem solving is unique. But no, this is a first for me too. We spent the next 2 hours trying on dresses. Natalie felt like a life-size doll being dressed and undressed, but she had to admit that Rachel had impeccable taste. Every dress fit perfectly, probably because Rachel had somehow obtained Natalie's exact measurements. How did you know my size? Natalie asked as she examined herself in a midnight blue dress that made her eyes look enormous. I may have called the boutique where you bought your bridesmaid dress and explained I was coordinating a surprise gift. Rachel said without a hint of guilt. That one is perfect, by the way. It photographs beautifully, which matters because there will definitely be photos tonight. Photos? Natalie's stomach dropped. Like public photos. The investors will likely want pictures. Social media is unavoidable these days. Chesta adjusted the dress's neckline slightly. But that also works in our favor. The more authentic this appears, the better. Learning the role after Rachel left, Natalie spent the afternoon studying the shared document she and Garrett had created. Their fake relationship timeline was surprisingly detailed now. Garrett must have added to it overnight, including small details like their favorite restaurants, inside jokes they supposedly shared, and even the names of each other's childhood pets. Her phone rang at 3 p.m. Garrett's name appeared on the screen. Hello. Fiancio's Natalie answered, testing out how the word felt. We need to practice, Garrett said without preamble. Can you video call? Right now? The dinner is in 5 hours. We should be prepared. Natalie switched to video and found herself looking at Garrett in what appeared to be a home office. He wore a casual button-down shirt, his hair slightly messy, and he looked more human than he had the night before in his formal suit. Hi, she said, suddenly feeling awkward. Hi, he cleared his throat. So we should quiz each other. Basic facts that couples would know. Okay, what's my favorite color? Garrett paused. We didn't establish that. Exactly. We need to know these things. Natalie grabbed a notebook. Let's start with basics. My favorite color is sage green. What's yours? Navy blue. But I don't really think about favorite colors. Well, now you do. When's my birthday? They spent the next hour filling in details about each other's lives. Natalie learned that Garrett was an only child raised by his grandmother. After his parents died in a car accident when he was 8, he learned that Natalie had 2 younger brothers and had put herself through photography school while working 3 jobs. You're the oldest? Garrett asked. That explains the organizational skills. What organizational skills? You've known me for 24 hours. You created a detailed timeline last night while covered in champagne. You've already memorized everything in our shared document. You think ahead. He paused. I recognize the trait because I do it too. There was something in his voice that made Natalie look at him more carefully through the screen. "Being the responsible one is exhausting sometimes," she said softly. "Yes," Garrett agreed. "It really is." They looked at each other through their screens, and something shifted. This wasn't just a business transaction anymore. They were two people who understood each other's burdens in a way most people didn't. The dinner begins. The car that picked up Natalie at 6:30 was absurdly luxurious. Leather seats, a minibar, and a privacy screen that the driver politely raised without being asked. Garrett was already inside, looking impossibly handsome in a charcoal suit with a subtle pattern. "You look beautiful," he said, as she settled into the seat beside him. "You're supposed to say that?" "We're engaged." "I'm saying it because it's true." He pulled out a small box. "I had this cleaned and resized today. I wanted to make sure it fit perfectly." Natalie opened the box to find her grandmother's ring, now polished to a shine and sitting in an elegant ring box. Garrett took it out and held her left hand gently. "May I?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. The gesture felt more intimate than it should have. "Thank you for taking care of it," Natalie whispered. "Thank you for trusting me with it." They drove through Napa Valley as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The French Laundry appeared like something from a fairy tale. All elegant architecture and beautiful gardens, Tanaka and his colleagues were already seated in the private dining room. They stood when Natalie and Garrett entered, their faces lighting up with genuine warmth. "Miss Hayes, we are so delighted you could join us," Tanaka said, shaking both their hands enthusiastically. Performing Love the Dinner was a masterclass in acting. Natalie found herself laughing at Garrett's stories, touching his arm naturally when making points, and catching his eye across the table in a way that felt surprisingly real. Garrett played his part perfectly too, his hand finding hers under the table, his attention constantly returning to her even when discussing complex business matters. "Tell us," one of the investors asked during the main course. "How did Garrett propose?" "He's been very secretive about the details." Natalie took a sip of wine, remembering their story. "It was at the top of Coit Tower in San Francisco. We'd gone to watch the sunset, which is something we do fairly regularly." "She loves photographing the city at golden hour," Garrett added smoothly. "I've learned more about light and composition in 6 months than I ever thought possible." "He's a surprisingly good student," Natalie said, smiling at him. "Patient, detail-oriented, willing to wake up at 5 a.m. for the perfect shot." "Only for you," Garrett said, and the way he looked at her made Natalie's breath catch. He was good at this. Maybe too good? So romantic. One of the wives sighed. "And the proposal itself?" "He was nervous," Natalie continued, which was adorable because Garrett is never nervous. He'd been carrying the ring for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. "I kept finding excuses," Garrett said, his thumb stroking the back of her hand under the table. Nothing felt right. "But then we were standing there watching the sun set over the bay, and Natalie said something about how the best moments are the unexpected ones. And then he got down on one knee right there on the observation deck," Natalie finished. "There were tourists taking pictures, a street musician playing violin, and this man who never does anything without a plan, just acted on impulse." "What did you say to her?" Tanaka asked Garrett directly. Garrett's eyes met Natalie's, and for a moment she forgot they were acting. "I said that she made every day feel like that moment at the top of the tower, like anything was possible, and that I didn't want to spend another day without her knowing she was the most important thing in my life." The table erupted in applause. One of the wives was crying, and Natalie was trying very hard not to forget that none of this was real. Cracks in the performance after dinner. While the investors were ordering dessert, Natalie excused herself to the restroom. She needed a moment to breathe, to remind herself this was a job, nothing more. She was reapplying lipstick when one of the investors' wives entered. The woman had been quiet during dinner, observing everything with sharp, intelligent eyes. "You love him very much," the woman said in accented English. "It wasn't a question." "I do," Natalie replied automatically, then caught herself. Did she? No, this was fake. "He's easy to love." "My husband and I have been married 40 years. the woman continued. I recognize true affection when I see it. The way you look at each other, it's genuine. Natalie's heart pounded. Thank you. That means a lot. But I also recognize something else. The woman met Natalie's eyes in the mirror. Fear. You're both afraid of what you feel. Before Natalie could respond, the woman smiled kindly and left. The ride home, the dinner ended successfully. The investors were charmed. The business discussions went well. Everyone agreed to meet again in a few days to finalize details. Garrett and Natalie maintained their performance perfectly until they were back in the car, alone behind the privacy screen. That went better than expected, Garrett said. Loosening his tie, your proposal story was very convincing, Natalie replied, looking out the window to avoid his eyes. So was your reaction to it? You looked genuinely moved. I'm a good actress, are you? Garrett turned to face her. Because I'm starting to have trouble distinguishing between Natalie the actress and Natalie the person. She finally looked at him. What's that supposed to mean? It means that holding your hand during dinner didn't feel like pretending. It felt like the most natural thing I've done in years. Natalie's breath caught. Garrett, we can't. I know. Business arrangement. Clear parameters. But Natalie, that woman who talked to you in the restroom, she said something to me too. She said we looked at each other like people who were fighting against something inevitable. What did you tell her? Nothing. Because I didn't have an answer. He ran a hand through his hair. This was supposed to be simple. A transaction. But you're not simple, and this isn't feeling like a transaction anymore. The extended proposal Natalie should have been panicking. Instead, she felt strangely calm. What are you suggesting? The investors want to feature our story in a business magazine article. It would be excellent publicity for the company and the deal. Garrett paused. But it requires more than one dinner. It would mean 6 weeks of appearances, events, meeting each other's families, being publicly engaged. 6 weeks, Natalie repeated. I'll pay you $75,000 total for 6 weeks of your time. He held up a hand before she could protest. Before you say anything, consider this. You mentioned your photography business is struggling. That money could give you the freedom to pursue the projects you actually care about instead of whatever pays the bills. He was right. $75,000 would change her life. But it would also mean 6 weeks of pretending, of blurring the lines between fake and real, of spending time with a man who made her feel things she absolutely should not be feeling. What about after? She asked. After 6 weeks, clean break. We stage an amicable separation. Blame busy schedules, different life goals, whatever narrative works. You walk away with the money and your freedom. I keep the investment in the company. And these feelings you mentioned, the things that don't feel like pretending? Garrett's jaw tightened. We acknowledge they exist, and we manage them like adults. 6 weeks? That's all. Natalie looked at her grandmother's ring on her finger. She thought about her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, the unpaid bills on her desk, the dream photography projects. She kept putting off because she was too busy with work that paid. She thought about the way Garrett had looked at her during dinner, the stories they'd created together, the unexpected connection forming between them. 6 weeks, she said finally. But we need rules. Setting boundaries, they spent the rest of the car ride establishing guidelines. No talking about feelings unless absolutely necessary for appearances. No physical affection beyond what was required for public events. Honest communication about boundaries and comfort levels. An exit strategy that protected both of them. We should probably meet each other's families, Garrett said as they pulled up to Natalie's hotel. For authenticity, my family will love you, Natalie said. They're enthusiastic about everything. Your family is what worries me. I only have my grandmother. She raised me. She's sharp, direct, and will see through any pretense immediately. Fantastic. When do I meet her? Tomorrow. She's hosting a family lunch. Garrett hesitated. She's the only person I can't lie to. I need to tell her the truth. Natalie's eyes widened. You're going to tell your grandmother we're faking this? She'll know anyway. Better to be honest and ask for her help than try to deceive her and fail. You really think she'll go along with this? My grandmother wants 2 things. for me to be happy, and for me to continue my grandfather's legacy. This arrangement accomplishes the second. As for the first, he trailed off. As for the first, Natalie prompted. Garrett looked at her with an intensity that made her pulse race. I'm starting to think it might accomplish that too. Before Natalie could respond, he opened his door. I'll pick you up at 11 tomorrow. Wear something comfortable. My grandmother values authenticity over formality. He walked her to the hotel entrance, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. When they reached the door, he turned to face her. Thank you, he said softly. For tonight? For all of this. If you're paying me $75,000, you don't need to thank me. I'm thanking you anyway. He leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Good night, Natalie. She watched him walk back to the car, her fingers touching the spot where his lips had been. This was dangerous. This was getting complicated. This was exactly what she'd agreed not to let happen, and yet, as she rode the elevator up to her room, Natalie couldn't stop smiling. 6 weeks begin the next morning. Natalie stood in front of her hotel mirror, trying on the 5th outfit. Comfortable but presentable for meeting a grandmother who apparently had superhuman perception skills. She finally settled on dark jeans, a cream-colored sweater, and boots. Her phone buzzed with a text from her own mother. Mom, Brooke told me you have a boyfriend. Why didn't you tell us? Natalie, it's new, Mom. Still figuring things out. Mom, bring him to Sunday dinner next week. Your father wants to meet him, Natalie. Mom, I don't think Mom. Next Sunday. 6 p.m. No arguments. Love you, Natalie groaned. Her family meeting Garrett. Garrett's grandmother meeting her. This was spiraling into something far more complex than a simple business arrangement. Another text came through, this time from Garrett. Garrett, in the lobby. No rush, Natalie. Be right down. How nervous should I be about your grandmother? Garrett, on a scale of 1 to 10? Probably an 8. Natalie, that's not comforting. Garrett, she's going to like you. I'm certain of it. Natalie, how can you be certain? Garrett, because I like you. And my grandmother and I have similar taste. Natalie stared at that message for a long moment before heading downstairs. Garrett was waiting by the entrance. Looking casual in jeans and a navy sweater that matched his eyes, he smiled when he saw her, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Ready to meet the most important woman in my life? He asked. Absolutely not, Natalie replied. Let's go. Meeting grandmother Pembroke, the drive to Garrett's grandmother's house took them into the hills above Napa Valley, where estates sat behind iron gates and manicured hedges. Natalie's nervousness increased with every mile. Tell me about her, Natalie said. Beyond the fact that she raised you and can detect lies from space, Garrett's expression softened. Her name is Dorothy, but everyone calls her Tote. She was a research scientist before she retired chemistry. She still reads academic journals for fun and argues with scientists. Half her age on internet forums. She sounds intimidating. She's brilliant and direct and has no patience for nonsense. But she's also the kindest person I know. He paused. When my parents died, she could have sent me to boarding school. Instead, she completely rearranged her life to raise me herself. Taught me everything that matters, like how to run a company, like how to be a good human being. The company skills came later. They pulled up to a beautiful craftsman-style home with a sprawling garden. An older woman was kneeling in a flower bed, wearing gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed hat. That's her, Garrett said, parking the car. Fair warning, she'll probably grill you immediately. I thought you were telling her the truth. I am. That doesn't mean she won't have questions. They approached the garden, and Dorothy Pembroke looked up. She was in her 70s, with silver hair, bright blue eyes, identical to Garrett's, and a smile that transformed her entire face. My boy. She stood up, pulling off her gloves. And you must be Natalie, the fake fiancé. Natalie blinked. You already know? Of course I know. Garrett called me last night. She embraced Natalie warmly. Welcome, dear. I understand you're helping my grandson avoid losing everything his grandfather built. That's one way to put it, Natalie managed. Come inside. I made lunch and I have approximately 400 questions. The interrogation Dorothy's kitchen was warm and cluttered with books, cooking utensils, and what appeared to be half a chemistry experiment on the counter. She served homemade soup and fresh bread while settling in to interrogate them thoroughly. So, she said, looking between Garrett and Natalie, a fake engagement for business purposes. Very practical. Very Garrett. What I want to know is why you agreed, Natalie. $75,000, Natalie answered honestly. Good. Honesty. I like that. Dorothy nodded approvingly. Money is a perfectly reasonable motivation. Anyone who claims otherwise is either rich or lying. What else? What else? Natalie repeated. Yes, dear. People don't agree to complicated deceptions purely for money. There's always something else. Natalie glanced at Garrett, who looked equally curious about her answer. I'm tired of struggling, she admitted. I became a photographer because I love it. But I spend so much time on work I hate just to pay bills that I've forgotten why I loved it in the first place. This money means freedom. Time to create work that matters to me. Dorothy studied her carefully. That's a good reason. Garrett, what about you? Why Natalie specifically? She was convenient, Garrett started, then stopped at his grandmother's sharp look. That came out wrong. I mean, she was there when I needed someone, and she went along with it, without hesitation. And, Dorothy prompted. And she's easy to talk to. She doesn't treat me like a CEO or a checkbook. She argues with me, challenges me, makes me laugh. He looked at Natalie. She makes me feel normal. The kitchen fell silent. Natalie's heart was racing. Well, Dorothy said finally, this is going to be interesting. The grandmother's wisdom after lunch. Dorothy asked to speak with Natalie alone. They walked through the garden while Garrett cleaned up inside. He likes you, Dorothy said without preamble. Really likes you. It's just the situation, Natalie protested. We're playing roles. I've known that boy his entire life. I've seen him with countless women his own age. Women from appropriate families, women his mother selected for him before she stopped caring about his happiness. He's never looked at any of them the way he looks at you. Barely know each other. Sometimes that's when we're most honest. Before we learn to protect ourselves, Dorothy stopped beside a rosebush. Can I tell you something about my grandson? Of course, Garrett has spent his entire life trying to prove he deserves the things he has. His parents died tragically. He inherited wealth and opportunity he didn't earn. So he works twice as hard as anyone else, never lets himself relax, never allows himself to want things just for the sake of wanting them.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. I've watched him slowly disappear into that company, into obligations and responsibilities. He's forgotten how to live for himself. Dorothy turned to face Natalie directly. Until you? Yesterday on the phone, he was excited, nervous, alive. I haven't heard that in his voice in years. Natalie felt tears prickling her eyes. I don't know what to do with that information. You don't have to do anything. Just don't hurt him intentionally. And don't let him hurt you either by pretending this is only business when you both know it's becoming something more. The first public event 2 days later. Natalie found herself at a tech industry charity gala in San Francisco. Wearing another stunning dress courtesy of Rachel and trying not to hyperventilate. This was their first major public appearance as an engaged couple, complete with press, photographers, and Garrett's professional colleagues. Remember, Garrett murmured as they approached the entrance. We're in love. We're happy. We can't keep our hands off each other. That last part wasn't in our agreement. It's implied in engagements. His hand found the small of her back. Trust me. Natalie took a deep breath. 6 weeks. I can do 6 weeks. The gala was overwhelming. Hundreds of people in designer clothes, champagne flowing freely. Conversations about funding rounds and IPOs that Natalie couldn't follow. But Garrett never left her side, introducing her to everyone, including her in conversations, making sure she felt comfortable. You're good at this, she whispered during a quiet moment. At what? Making me feel like I belong here. You do belong here. You're with me? A photographer approached them. Mr. Pembroke, can we get a photo of you and your fiancé? They posed together, Garrett's arm around her waist, both smiling. But as the photographer counted down, Garrett leaned in and whispered in her ear, "You look beautiful tonight. Not for the cameras. Just beautiful." The camera flashed, capturing Natalie's genuine smile, the slight blush on her cheeks, the way they were looking at each other like the rest of the world had disappeared. That photo would end up on the cover of 3 different tech magazines. The X appears halfway through the evening. A woman approached them. She was stunning, with perfect black hair, designer everything, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Garrett," she said warmly, "I heard the news. Congratulations." Garrett's entire body tensed. "Vanessa, I didn't know you'd be here. I'm consulting for several companies in attendance." Her eyes slid to Natalie. "You must be the fiancé." "How unexpected, Natalie Hayes," Natalie said, extending her hand. Vanessa's handshake was brief and cold. "How did you two meet?" "Garrett is usually so private about his personal life. Coffee shop in San Francisco," Natalie replied smoothly. "6 months ago. Best spilled latte of my life." "How charming." Vanessa's smile sharpened. "Garrett, could I speak with you privately?" "About the Hansen account." "Anything you need to say can be said in front of Natalie," Garrett said firmly. "Actually," Vanessa pulled out her phone, "I have some interesting information. About your engagement timeline. See, I have a friend who works at the county clerk's office. Very helpful with public records." Natalie's stomach dropped. "What are you implying?" Garrett's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating that there's no marriage license on file for you and Miss Hayes, which is strange for an engaged couple planning a wedding." "We haven't set a date yet," Natalie said quickly. "But you applied for the license, surely?" "That's what serious couples do." Vanessa's eyes glittered. "Unless, of course, this engagement isn't quite what it appears to be." The confrontation. Garrett stepped closer to Vanessa, his voice low enough that only the 3 of them could hear. "What do you want? The truth? Are you really engaged? Or is this a convenient arrangement to impress your investors? My relationship with Natalie is none of your business. It becomes my business when it affects your company's reputation. I have clients considering major investments with Pembroke Technologies. They deserve to know if the CEO is honest or if he manufactures relationships for business gain." Natalie felt panic rising. This woman could destroy everything with one phone call to the press. "How much?" Garrett asked flatly. Vanessa laughed. "You think I want money?" "Garrett, I want the truth. Tell me right now, is this engagement real?" The question hung in the air. Garrett looked at Natalie, and something passed between them. A decision. A commitment. A leap into the unknown. "Yes," Garrett said firmly. "It's real. Really?" Vanessa's eyebrow arched. "Prove it. How exactly do you want me to prove my feelings?" "Kiss her. Right now. Like you mean it. If you're really in love, that should be easy." Natalie's heart stopped. They'd barely touched beyond necessary public displays. A real kiss would cross every boundary they'd established, but Garrett was already turning to her, his eyes asking permission. Natalie nodded slightly. He cupped her face gently in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be," she whispered back. Then he kissed her. The real kiss. Wasn't like the forehead kisses or the hand-holding or any of their carefully choreographed displays of affection. This was real and urgent and absolutely devastating. Garrett kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. Natalie kissed him back like she'd been wanting to do this since the moment they met, which she realized with shocking clarity that she had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vanessa was staring at them with wide eyes. "Okay," she said quietly. That was real. She walked away without another word. Disappearing into the crowd, Natalie and Garrett stood frozen. Still inches apart, both trying to process what had just happened. Natalie started. "I know," Garrett interrupted. "We should talk about." "Not here, please. Not here." They made it through the rest of the gala on autopilot. Smiling, talking, pretending everything was normal while the kiss burned between them like a live wire. The moment they got into the car, Garrett closed the privacy screen and turned to her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have, don't." Natalie interrupted. "Don't apologize for that kiss. But we had rules. Boundaries. I know what we had. And I know what that kiss was." "What was it?" Garrett's voice was rough. Natalie took a deep breath. It was honest. Maybe the most honest thing either of us has done since this started. The truth comes out, they drove in. Silence for several minutes before Garrett spoke again. I can't do this anymore," he said. Quietly, Natalie's heart sank. "You want to end the arrangement?" "No, I can't keep pretending this is only business." He turned to face her fully. "Natalie, somewhere between the wedding and the dinner with the investors and meeting my grandmother and tonight, this stopped being fake for me. Maybe it never was fake. Maybe I've been lying to myself because it was easier than admitting I was falling for someone I barely know." "Garrett, you don't have to say anything." "I know this complicates everything. I know we had an agreement. But after that kiss, I can't keep lying to you or to myself." He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know when it happened, but I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, changing everything. Natalie felt tears streaming down her face. "You can't love me. We've known each other for 5 days. No? It's completely irrational. It's impossible. I know that too. We're from completely different worlds." "I don't care about any of that." Garrett reached for her hand. "I care about how you make me laugh. How you challenge me. How you see me as a person instead of a position or a bank account. I care about spending time with you and learning everything about you and figuring out if this insane connection between us could actually become something real." Natalie was crying in earnest now. "I can't afford to love you, emotionally. I can't afford to fall for someone who's so far out of my league that we exist in different universes. Someone who could break my heart without even trying. What if I promise not to break it?" "You can't promise that." "Nobody can." "Then what if I promise to try? To be honest and careful, and to treat your heart like the precious thing it is?" He squeezed her hand. "Natalie, I know this is crazy. I know we agreed this was temporary. But I don't want temporary anymore. I want real." The decision. Natalie looked at their joined hands. At the ring that had belonged to her grandmother. At the man who had somehow crashed into her life and turned everything upside down. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "So am I. I don't know how to do this. How to date a billionaire. How to fit into your world. I don't want you to fit into my world. I want us to build our own world. Together." Garrett brought her hand to his lips. "I'm not asking you to have everything figured out right now. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that this could be real." That we could be real? Natalie thought about the past 5 days. The laughter and the conversations and the unexpected moments of connection. She thought about how icily she fit against his side, how natural it felt to touch him, how right it seemed when he smiled at her. She thought about the kiss that had felt like coming home. "Okay," she said finally. Okay, let's try real. Let's see what happens when we stop pretending and start being honest about what we feel." Garrett's face transformed with hope. "Really? Really? But I need you to understand something. I'm still scared. I'm still not sure this will work. And I still need that money because I'm practical and student loans are real. Money's yours regardless. This isn't conditional." "I know. But we need to be clear. If we're doing this for real, then we're dating. Not fake engaged. Actually dating. Getting to know each other without the performance. What about the investors? The magazine article?" Natalie thought for a moment. "We tell them the truth. That we met under unusual circumstances. That what started as convenience became real. That we're figuring it out as we go. Real relationships are messy. Let's show them that." Garrett looked at her with something like awe. "You're remarkable and practical. There's a difference." "No," he said softly. "You're remarkable. And I'm falling more in love with you every time you argue with me." "Good," Natalie said, wiping her tears and smiling. "Because I'm falling for you too, and I plan to argue with you about everything."